say live. And yes, Catherine, Dr. Odera is here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the space where we reimagine Africa. And guess who's here with me today? Before I do that, I know it is the space where we reimagine Africa, we reimagine living. And I'm so honored to always come here with the biggest and grandest of stories of my friends. And today I have Dr. Catherine Odera. And that is amazing. And folks are going to start joining, Catherine. So I'd like you to know that you're not going to die on Facebook. You are not going to die on Facebook Live. It is not going to happen. I can guarantee that this is going to be easy for you because we've known each other for how long?
Decades. A long time. From primary school. Yep.
So long. Yep. So long. And you were in the neighborhood. I got to know you from the neighborhood, and I was your favorite friend. And guess what? Eva Wagura says, good morning. Your people are starting to join.
Hey, people.
Says, good morning. Here are her favorite people. She is so happy. And you know, these are your cheerleaders. These are your cheerleaders.
Yes, I'm at home.
I know you are at home for sure. You know, and I think one of the things, and I don't think we told people when we first started our class, and you joined my class, Design Your Life, in January of 2019, and that's how you got to meet all these fabulous ladies, right?
Yes, that was the doorway to meeting every single person, and I am forever grateful for that.
Right, and Virginia Kimani is here to make fun of you. You know that, right?
Hi, Virginia.
Virginia says, "Oh, I cannot miss this." And you know, Virginia makes fun of everybody because she also, like you, was a Facebook Live virgin.
Really?
Yes, she was a Facebook Live virgin, and she was so terrified. And now she just goes on there and sells her products, and she talks about the importance of financial literacy, and especially as an African woman.
Yes.
And African families, what you should do to protect your family. Lily Ogala is here, your cheering squad.
Lily, I see you.
Right. And then Marsha is here from Abu Dhabi, UAE, and she's happy to hear you. So Catherine, I tell you, your fan club is here already, and I want you to be as comfortable as possible. You're taking a breather.
Yes, I'm doing this for Lily and I because we are Facebook virgins.
Yes, you are. And Joanne is here, and Joanne says, good morning, cousin. Beatrice says, good morning, ladies. I'm telling you, your whole tribe woke up this morning to hear you.
Oh, I'm very excited. Thank you.
And as I was mentioning earlier, we've known each other since we were little girls. We grew up in the Langata Ngei Moi Estate.
Yes.
Onyonka Estate.
Otiende
Estate area in Kenya as children. And so, of course, we got to know each other. And then we were fortunate enough to go to the same primary school. So we went to Karensi Primary School. Venita is awake, by the way. I want you to know it's 6 a.m. and she's awake.
Venita. Hey.
So, everybody's here to see you. And then, of course, we separated. I think you were a year behind me in school.
I think you were in the previous 763, and then I was the second 844.
Okay, so you were 2 years behind me.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I thought I was, spring chicken, but you're now telling me.
Hey, you can be whatever we want to be.
And then, of course, you went to St. Teresa's High School. You went to Kenyatta University. And that is where you started your professional career. But I wanted to talk about you as a child, number one, because we see Dr. Odera, but it had to have started somewhere. And it seems like you always knew that you were going to get to the highest level of education, right?
Yes, I did.
About you, your dad, your mom, your family, and that experience.
Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for welcome, Jean. Thank you for welcoming us into your space, into this sacred space where we talk about who we are in a place that is supportive and we hold each other. So just seeing everybody joining in, I know that I'm home. And so I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I'm going to start like this. Now, this is the story all about how my life got twisted, turned upside down. I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the designer of my own life. So this is going to be a story of, and Jean is going to help me weave it. I've always believed in the strength of storytelling of cultural shackles, childhood shackles, and how that in itself, if we are not paying attention to what impact that will have, we may be focusing on the now and the future when the previous has a very, very big piece that is sort of leading this path. And so I grew up, you asked me to talk a little bit about growing up in Kenya. I was the third of four. If you're a middle child, forgotten children. And so I was a middle child, and the big part of being a middle child is that you actually get a sense of independence. You get to play on your own in the corner. You have imaginary friends and all that, and that's where imagination comes in.
Yeah.
And so I was, and the reason why I liked how you named this live was you actually mentioned my name, Catherine Odera, and how did I actually meet myself? Because I was in different spaces. So the reason why I wanted to also start with the background is when I was born on a Tuesday, I in Luo culture, especially in my family, and Luo cultures are not homogeneous, but in my culture, you wait and name the child a few days or weeks after the child has been born until the child actually meets the name of the character, whether or not it's somebody who's passed on to our ancestors, whether or not it's something happening within the environment. But my dad was going to wait for the name that actually fit me. And so, of course, I had my name, Catherine. All our names were going to start with C, Colin, Cynthia, Catherine, Chris. But the middle one was going to be special. And so my dad, after actually 2 months, named me after one of his great aunts called Ayugi. She was a tiny little old lady but she didn't start old, of course. She was fierce and feisty and chaotic, challenged norms and courageous. And she would sit where men would sit, and she smoked her cigarette inside with a smoke inside. Yes.
Inside.
Yes, exactly. And then after that, she started smoking a pipe. And then she would show up and say, "What are we discussing today?" And they'd be like, "Go where the women are." And she's like, "No, I'm here to stay." And so my dad, through oral literature and everything, decided that this fits this chaotic little girl who is trying to, with her little button nose, trying to do all these other things, giggling all over the place. And he called me Ayugi Nyar Kidi.
Yes.
Is Ayugi, the daughter of the stone. And so that's where I got my nickname. And in short, my dad would call me Kidi. And so if you're talking about what those foundations were in my childhood and what those expectations were, I knew I had to live up to the name of Kidi.
Yes.
And I also, with that came expectations. I would hear conversations of, "Oh, you're the glue, you're the peacemaker." And one of the things that you had said was that my dad was actually speaking to the future me, but was speaking to me as an 8-year-old child. And I was actually internalizing that.
Yes.
And so I took on a lot of those things as an 8-year-old to sort of hold this sometimes dysfunctional family together.
Yeah.
And so, and I know we'll come back to when you asked me that question about being 8-year-old.
Let's hold that
yes, let's hold that.
The bigness. And I think I wanted to focus on the bigness of what your dad had you believe about yourself. So I didn't know that. And if you guys don't know this, Catherine is like maybe 5 feet tall.
That's my secret. I'm 5'6" on my passport.
Most of you have met Catherine on Zoom, and at least the folks who are in my class. But Catherine is not necessarily a tall girl, or a big girl, but she has lived this very big life and just went for a lot of big things. And it obviously comes from that instilling from your name at birth into who you were encouraged to be, and then you became this big voice.
Yes. Right? And that was that's very true. And so through my dad, and this is what he used to say. And in African cultures or Kenyan cultures or Luo culture, sometimes you expect that the fathers will always pay attention to the boys.
Yes.
But what he did was he taught me the love of music and art. We would tell my parents, my mom, we are going to Consolata Church, or by then we had moved. Or we're going to St. Barnabas when we lived in Langata. And then we'd divert and go to Kenya Musical Festival. And we're watching people dancing. And I'm like, this is prayer. I love it. And so I grew to appreciate more about the world by being introduced to those things. And this is what he used to say, you can be whatever you want to be. Don't let, and I'd say, why am I not growing taller? Because people were taller than me and whatever it is. And he said, but can you run? Show them during sports day. And I would run like the wind was chasing me. And later on, I'm this little person thinking, I actually got the wind in my sails because I believed I could do it. But that voice was cemented because of my father, where it was, I learned how to do the verse speaking, writing, expressing myself. My dad had a sense of humor for days, like purity. And it's more of, how do you keep on looking at life when you can also laugh at it? When you laugh because sometimes you can't cry. And sometimes you laugh because other people need uplifting. So that he lifted me. You're right. He lifted me.
And I mean, you've done that really well, because now that I've never heard you talk about your dad like that. Yeah. I am a Luo. Yeah. You are a Luo. And yes. I don't know any of that culture. I think for me, my birth certificate was printed with all my names on that very day. So I didn't get to grow into my name like you did, but yes. There's some value in doing that, in first looking at the character of the child and then naming the child to grow into that. So that's pretty amazing to me. I haven't heard that. But then now you grew up a fearless girl. Yes. You were this fearless girl. And so all these lessons that you've learned in my class, and for those of you who don't know, I have a class called Design Your Life. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the ladies who are on this Facebook Live today have been in my class. And some of the lessons that we teach are basically on faith, figuring what you want in life, what kind of thoughts you have. And it seems like innately you had these thoughts as a child.
Yes.
Like you knew the lessons.
Yes.
And Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich is the guide that we use, but you already knew these lessons.
Yes.
You lived them, because in primary school you excelled. Mm-hmm. Then you went ahead and did your exam to go into high school, and you did well.
Yes.
You would push yourself knowing that you could.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit more about the progression. How did you choose your career?
Yes. I'll say that the main foundation was the belief in good, the belief in even if I knew the world was not perfect.
Yeah.
I believed that I had a role to play in ensuring that there was some sense of striving, there was persistence, and I always wanted to give a voice to the voiceless, and it was evident from even primary school, when I was a first chooser or second chooser, when you get your team, and people would go for the fastest or whatever it is. I always found that kid that nobody would choose, and I'd say that child is not going to be, my friend will not be chosen last. So I would pick, and the teammates would look at me like, seriously, this one, and we would find a place for her or out at the back to catch the ball. The back catcher. So when the ball went and Jean did this, there was that person whose strength was catching the ball. And so in tune with that, my imagination was unbelievable. All these things that Napoleon Hill is talking about. Faith, I had deep faith because I didn't even know there was anything else.
Yeah.
I knew that I was seeking I was always seeking to learn and grow. I was in tune with my inner faith. And an example of this is, there was a time my dad used to be such a giver, and that's maybe something that affected some of our growing up, such that we'd come home one day and find all the furniture is gone. He's donated it to a cousin somewhere who needed it. So we're like, hey, we are sitting on cushions today. Then the next day we'd get new furniture. We wouldn't know where the furniture went until we visited them. And we're like, that's the little mark I left. But however, one of the things that he did was one day he gave away our colored TV and exchanged it for my cousin's black and white TV, where the aerial is like this and you have to move it, or somebody's on the roof almost dying holding the aerial. And so I had so much faith that I could pray for this black and white TV to become colored TV. And so I was there praying, and we turn it on and we see habari ya jioni, it's black and white. Another thing also, the progression was, when I was doing my KCPE, which is standard 8 or grade 8, I knew I was going to
high school.
Exactly. I had the faith that I was going to do well. The one that I knew I wouldn't do well in, or strive to go above average, was Kiswahili. I've always struggled with Kiswahili.
I wonder why.
Or Swahili.
Swahili.
I know
girls who struggle with Swahili.
Yes, too. And my cousin Joanne should have taught me a bit of Swahili. But it was more of, and then when I did my when I was in high school, a lot of personal things happened. I developed stomach ulcers, or I started the anxiety and worrying about things because something had happened to shake this perfect or sort of hopeful time in my life. And so I faced a bit of strife with that. I was cruising through high school. I was relying on talent, and I didn't have to study hard, but I was not doing well, and I was not. And KCSE is cumulative. You read from Form 1, which is 9th grade, to 12th grade, which is Form 4. And 2 weeks before the exam, because my dad started noticing a decline and I was not paying attention, he used the only way, which was different from what my loving dad is, he used the only way to trigger me to start caring.
Yes.
He said, "You are going to fail." He used those words. That was not my father's words, but he used it that day. And he said, 2 weeks before the exam, I had not started reading. And he said, "You're going to fail. You're going to fail because you are giving up." And so I said, "I'm not giving up." And I said, "You're not my dad." You know how people usually say such things. "Leave me alone, I'm grown." And I wasn't even grown. And so by him saying I was going to fail, in 2 weeks, and I tell people this, I didn't even have notes. I had textbooks. I never used to keep notes except English. I concentrated on saying, which subjects can I work on and actually pass?
Yes.
And then which ones am I trying to throw a Hail Mary, an Ingwon, and all that stuff that I will not pass? Those were the sciences. I knew those were my weaker points. And so I concentrated on the arts. But I knew for the first time, the faith came back.
Yes.
And I was studying. I knew what I was doing. I would wake up, go to school, do the exam. And when the results were coming out after 2 or 3 months, I knew I'd passed for some reason. Yeah. And so my dad, and we were not talking during those 3 months.
Yes.
I was not talking to my dad. And so he secretly went to check the results.
Yes.
Secretly, he went. and he called home and he said, "Kidi, you have passed. You are going to university." He said, "Your results are odd because you have A's. You have strong A's and B pluses, and you have D's. But we are going to university." I said, "We are going." And so that's where now I got my faith back. So if you can see in this story, I lose faith, I get it back. So earlier on, the ship was sort of righted. And And so after that, I knew that I was going to do something. And so I started teaching a girls' school. So this is where the progression went.
Before you started teaching, I'm curious to know, have you figured out what it is that caused your faith to shake? Why did you start coasting in high school?
I started coasting in high school because I joined, first of all, I'd say an iffy group.
Peer pressure.
Yes, peer pressure. And it was not that I was doing anything bad. I just was in very bad company. These rich kids just towing the line between what is, except one of them would try and sit and throw parties in the house because the dad was abroad. And so it was not because I was trying to live their life. Yeah. I just was not in, I started now caring what people thought.
Okay.
I started thinking that then the so what? All those, I used to think school is all, but I was in class, and even some classmates will tell you, I was a really good student.
Yeah.
But there was a disconnect that the people within my school life and maybe even home life, they could see there was a change. But within those last 2 years, there's a bit of a disconnect, but the disconnect was in me.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. And part of the reason I asked that question, because I know many moms are listening to this. And sometimes you wonder what happened to your great child. And I'm always curious to find out what happened, because it seems like, we have amnesia when you become a parent, you get amnesia and you start thinking that, you don't remember that this happened to you.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's important as part of the story for your children to see you for who you were completely, the whole you. That you were not this perfect little angel the entire time.
Yes.
Parents seem to forget that part, because when you're relatable, your children are likely to listen to you, right? And that's why I wanted to stop and truly make that point, because when teenage life kicks in, as Virginia said, parents need to know that it happens to the best of children.
Yes.
And you can recover from it. I thought about that threat, because apparently you got it in a way that many people don't. You're able to get into the university and fully thrive. Now, did you start teaching after the university?
Yes. Sorry, I skipped that. And the part that I also wanted to say, where the faith and God's work is that in 844, and I don't know how it used to be in the other real system, 760, because we were the guinea pigs, is that there used to be a cutoff point for when you can go to university. So every year it shifted. And so during that year, it was my exact cutoff that I actually
meant for you.
It was meant for me. And so at that time, I made promises. I said, this is the last time I'm ever going to be mediocre. I'm not going to, I'm like, what was I trying? You should have seen me. Just, walking in my 5'2", by then I don't know if it was 5'2", just saying, Catherine Odera, what were you thinking? And I'm walking in the streets of Kileleshwa. And so finally, I went to KU. It was a wonderful time. I was alive. I knew what was happening. I knew how to avoid bad groups. People would come and say, hey, what you trying to do? And I'll be like, I have a boyfriend in the States. And then they'll be like, oh my goodness, leave her alone. And so, but I was grounded. Yeah. I was grounded. My 4 years were full of hope and joy. And of course, studying, I was still a very big procrastinator. I would study the night before, put my foot in cold water, but at least I was studying, and I'd promised myself next semester will be different. So that was one thing that didn't change, that started changing now when I started taking your classes.
Absolutely.
So through all that.
One thing that you said, and this is important to the story, you said, Catherine Odera does not, and you called yourself by your name in third party.
Yes, okay. And I'm going to tell you about that. And so I went to teach, and I graduated with honors. I went to teach in Lwak Girls High School in Kenya, in a rural area, because they posted you what the Teaching Service Commission, very tribal, you were posted according to what tribe or ethnic group they thought you were. Whether or not I'd grown up in Nairobi, because my name was Odera, I was going to be posted in Luoland.
And
if you are Mwangi, you'd be posted in Central or anywhere else. So that's what they did. And I think it was a sort of colonial thought where you don't take people back to those physically separated areas, either one, to help the community, but secondly, send them back home.
Yeah,
that was the concept.
Yeah.
And so I taught girls in high school, and that's where my first calling came. With the alignment
to teach.
Was to teach. Was to teach, and that was my first impact.
Yeah,
girls, women and girls, but especially in girls that were striving in a very rural area, but which was a beautiful school built by the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
But surrounded by poverty, lots and lots of poverty. It was an oasis in a desert.
Yeah.
And so it was one of the times that I would sit down and I'd tell the students what my dad used to tell me: you can be whatever you want to be. But the reality was they came from families that were driven by poverty.
Yeah.
And if at all the parents were going to decide whether or not to put food on the table or marry off a 14-year-old, marriage was going to, because you get dowry.
Yes.
And so I'll never forget meeting this girl who was informed to, called Eunice. I wondered where she was in the next term. And in the market, because I used to go in the market to buy some little things.
Yeah.
It's so funny, this Nairobi girl buying things. I met her, and I have never forgotten the haunted look in her eyes. And she looked at me and she said, Miss Odera, because that's how we used to talk. It was actually Madam Odera, Madam.
Yeah.
I cannot believe. No, she told me, I thought you said I could be whatever I want to be, and education would open the door for me. And I said, yes. Eunice, where have you been? And she said, I am married as a third wife to one of the elders, and he was about 70. And all the innocence in this girl was gone. She was one of the best essay writers, composition writers, imaginative. She could write about anything, even before seeing it. She would write about winter, and she lived in Nyanza province. And at that point, I remember my little basket. If people know the kikapus of Kenya, I just dropped it down. I hugged her, but she had no tears. And it was the tears and the racking of the body was actually me crying, because that was my first feeling that words don't mean anything when you're fighting cultural shackles, when you are in these environments that don't mirror what my life had been.
Right.
Jean, that has haunted me until now. I tried to fight the village and tried to do all these things, but there was no way. They thought this Nairobi teacher trying to change cultural norms.
Yeah. For context, I think one of the things people don't understand, especially people who are not Africans, you would not get this. There are some cultural practices that are still going on to this day that hold girls back. They also hold boys back.
Yeah.
And to be clear, there are some families who will marry off their daughters so that they get the dowry, and it is just culture. There's thought around it. There's thought around it, and that's just to give you some context. And now it's kind of interesting because I know that you've always been interested in advancing the lives of women, and I see where it happened.
Yes.
Because it was a natural progression. You were named after this fearless woman, and you became that, embodied your name, and then went into a situation where you didn't have a choice but to go to that rural area and truly experience what was eventually going to be your work. And there's a reason why when I have guests on this space, I never tell the story of this is your degree and this is what you did and all that. I tell it as a part of the story because I think many times we get caught up in the label of Dr. Odera, and many people get caught up in then I put you in a box. And part of the reason why it's important to me, I didn't even know this story. and now I see who you have become, and everyone is about to find out, right?
Yes.
So here's go ahead, finish that
thought.
thought.
No. And so, and you're probably going to connect to the next one. Yeah. And so for me, and this is where when we're designing our lives, one of the things that you're teaching us, and that is the importance to pay attention to when some of the design already was happening, yes, but it was haphazard, or maybe we didn't pay attention or tune in that something was going to happen, or maybe there was a drop in that ocean that later on, many years later, is when you're like, that's what that meant. And so would you like me to progress, or did you have...
I wanted to go into the fact that, number one, there were a couple of things. When I talk about you always knew these lessons, there's a very key thing that happened in your life, which I want you to pay attention to. I want everyone to pay attention to, is that when you were coming to the US, your dad was in the hospital, right? And you were at the American Embassy. I'd like you to tell that story, because you were at the American Embassy about to get your visa, and you tuned into one of the biggest lessons, and it probably changed the trajectory of your life.
Exactly. When we think about the sort of things that we've been learning about hunches, about faith, about being in tune with our inner selves, paying attention to what the ether is saying, being in tune with God. My father was in 1998. My father was in Mater Hospital, in one of those last hospitalizations. And pardon?
Had he been unwell for a while?
He'd been unwell for a while. He had been unwell for a while. And so the person I had known, but for him during those times when he had the terminal illness, is when now he started refining his life. He's clearly started seeing what life should be. And even within his last days, he was trying to still give. And he now realized, I don't need to give to outside people when my central piece is my family. So he got it in the last days. Yes. But I was lined up at the US Embassy. If people, our opinions on this live know, the US Embassy was right in the middle of the city. What was that street called? Haile Selassie? I'm not really sure what it's called.
I remember. It was right in the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle. And you would line up, you could line up and try and get in to get a visa. But I was not actually going to get an F1 visa. I was going to, those days, if the Green Card Lottery, you would actually go line up, get some forms, and then you'd be able to sign. And I was also going to get information about how to apply for the F1.
Yes.
And so I was lining up. I had my business papers to take to my father. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, because my dad liked walking, it helped him not remember that he was not well. And so I'm lining up. I'm like, I'm going to get late. And there was this hunch. It was almost like a voice, but it was not saying, get out of line, something's about to happen. It was more of, you need to get out of this line because you are already late to go and see your dad. Mm-hmm. Or go to the post office, which was across the road, get the mail that you need to take to him so that he can review. And so I was thinking, but what if, and that hunch just said, get out. And I left, and I just started talking about it last year. I've not talked about this. I left the line and crossed the first part of the road to try and get to City Square post office. And I first had almost like the back of a truck shutting. And it turned out later that was the grenade that was thrown in to sort of get the guards out of the way.
Yes.
And as I crossed to the second part, the bomb went off.
Yes.
So the bomb went off, the worst sound I've ever had in my life. I fell down, somebody fell on top of me, and it was ringing of ears, the dust, and then there was this eerie silence. And we couldn't hear. And the guy who actually fell on top of me now I think something hit him and he was bleeding. But because he fell on top of me, he probably saved my life. And so dragging my leg, and I think I twisted, my knee was sprained, but by then I didn't know it was sprained. So I'm dragging my bag, running and going. And at that point, we were on the other side watching people running and wailing. It was like the humming. But what got me out of that line was that hunch, intuition, sixth sense, inner voice, God's voice said, get out. But the voice tied it to something that was important to me.
Yes.
Go and do not be late. Sorry, guys. Said, do not be late to get to your dad. And that's the only reason I got out of there. And how many times are we in situations when the situations, there's impending either doom or it's a toxic or a terrible situation, and we're trying to get out, and their messages, get out, and we don't listen. But this one was tied to something that was important to me. And so the news in the hospital, my dad got that there's been a bomb, and my mom had rushed to hospital to see if I was there. And my mom reached and she said, Kathy is not here. And my dad said, no, she hasn't come in yet. And she started wailing. And my dad said, God would not put me in this bed and take away my child. So he had the faith, he could feel it. He felt we had such a deep connection with him. And so he could feel that I was okay, but he had more faith that God would not give him this cup of suffering that he could not handle. So that was my turning point. Believe, intuition, as Benita says, and also know that those, tune in and listen, be still. And so, and that's, until today, it still remains one of those moments that I don't talk about much, but was pivotal.
Yeah.
So,
and for me, Catherine, I knew that story, and I knew your deep longing to help girls and women. And that is the reason why when you came into my world, I knew that there was more.
Yeah.
That in the world that I was living in, you moved to the US, you came and we connected, and then got to see each other. You worked at Kennesaw State, transforming the lives of the new students who came into the United States. You were working with international students. You moved to different stations in life. And then we meet you when you come into my class in the Design Your Life class, and you are now working in another office, in another university, and you are in a different space, not living as the big Catherine that we know, but we meet this shrinking Violet. Like, who is this girl who is so troubled?
Yeah.
Right? You've lived, right now you have told us about this big story. It's an amazing, and now suddenly you're this, who is this small person who is in the class?
Yes. And that is, for most people who knew me until Kennesaw, this gap is probably something that is hard for anyone to even imagine that I went through, because of how I was living up to my name before then. And so really quick, based on, because my dad passed away shortly after that, and I was able to, I went to the embassy to get a visa now 1 year later for an F1 visa. I didn't have enough bank statement, but I knew I was getting it.
Yes.
I knew I was going to get the visa. I'd already planned how I was going to thank everybody as I was leaving. There's something that connected, and I think the lady who was talking to me, who was meant to be the bad person of the day, looked at me and it said, tell me a little bit about your story. And so in 5 minutes, I told a story. She didn't even look at my papers. And she said, she didn't even ask, are you going to come back? And what she said is, come back for your visa at 3 p.m. Yeah. And so, and then the last piece that I also want to say before I connect everything is the year that my dad passed away. He passed away 2 months after the bombing, but it had nothing to do with the bombing. So his name, so when I went to see him from Loak, I was teaching, I went to see him. He was at Nairobi Hospital then. And by then, diabetes had taken his sight, his ears, his hearing, the limbs. He had a brain tumor as well. And so he could know me by my voice.
Yes.
So whenever we went to see him, we'd wear bright colors. So that's why I like bright colors. And
Yes.
so he goes and I'd sit and read him the newspaper. And so he was very upbeat. And by then, I didn't know it was what is called the surge. The surge is before a person is nearing the end of their life, there's almost a week that they're up, they're eating. And so the surge was when now I was with him. And the key to me saying this story is he took my hands in his hands and he said, Ayuki, God will bless the work of your hands. He couldn't see me, but he knew I was there. And so he held my hands and said, God will bless the work of your hands. And so I fed him. That's the last time he ate. I didn't know that because I went back to school to teach. And so he passed away 2 weeks later after going into a coma. But I didn't know he was in that state because the news got to be late.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one in my family that has that last impression of what my dad was alive and eating and everything.
Yeah.
And so I came to the US. I came without tuition for the first semester. During orientation, I said, hey, I don't have tuition. And the guy was like, seriously, you come? And I said, yes, but I work very hard. And said, okay, we're going to give you a small loan until October. If you don't pay, we are making sure we cancel your I-20. Within that week of orientation, I got a graduate assistantship. So if I tell you that the big Catherine was moving and working and I believed I could, and I got my positions knowing in Kennesaw State, when I interviewed in Student Center, I was walking, mapping, before I've even been interviewed, mapping my way into the parking lot, knowing that this is where I will park my car when I start working here. This is how I'm going to go into my place of work. And 2 weeks later, I had the job. And the reason is not saying I was amazing. It's to say that thank you very much. Can I have that in writing? But it was also that deep belief, that desire to see myself in a position and to know that there's goodness in this. And so my calling, just as you said, in Kennesaw State, was tied to my experience as an international student.
Exactly.
I knew what it was not to have an advocate. And I said, nobody is ever going to pass through my door. And because I was going to be working on a different part of student affairs, but I chose international because of that. I said, nobody is going to be passing through my doors and not have an advocate teach them things that I did not know. Exactly. And so Kennesaw State was the best years of my life. Yeah. Every committee I was called to, even when I was pregnant, I was walking like this. They're like, we can't start a meeting because Catherine is coming. I'm waddling. I'm like, hey. And then when I read, they're like, yeah, the meeting can start now. But because they knew that I had built a place at that table, or somebody had made the space because I needed to. So I was big Catherine, not by, I'm this, but it was more of, I was living my best life in my element.
Yes.
When I moved to Diana. Yes, I'm like crazy Diana. Thank you.
Comment, Diana.
I know, because I saw it right there. So and thank you for that. And so between the time I moved from Kennesaw and went to Northeastern University, something shifted.
Yeah.
Things began to darken. My joy dissipated. I was defined by my work. It was a fall from grace, not literally, but fall from grace. The grace of God was not, it was always there, but I pushed everything aside. Mm-hmm. It was literally, my days were filled with, and remember, anybody who's read there, we were laughing with Jean about this yesterday. Things fall apart. Okonkwo, the guy who walked with a spring, everything was started falling apart for me in tandem.
Yeah.
If you think about domino effect,
Yeah.
one thing affected everything else. And a lot of it was, I call it a fall from grace, a fall from his grace, from my perspective. It was not that he ever gave up on me.
Yes.
I moved from his grace, and I believed that I could do all things through Catherine Odera because it was I who strengthened me. And so when I moved to Northeastern, to the toxic environment where humanity was missing, I mirrored and matched my environment.
Oh, did you hear? Everybody needs to hear that. I mirrored and matched my environment. And the thing about this is, every one of us, you've described to us a huge light that you had. You had a huge light that you brought to Kennesaw State. But there's something about your not enoughness when you were going to Northeastern.
Yes.
It was Northeastern, right?
Yes.
Northeastern, that got you in a space where you mirrored what you found there instead of bringing your light.
Yes.
And if you had brought your light, they would have connected to your light and it would have been different.
Exactly. But when I brought my light, they dimmed it. I let them.
You allowed them.
I allowed them. You see how I corrected myself? The new me did a quick correction. I let them dim it. I let them dim it. It's like a candle, and I was like, look, the wind is out there. And I actually walked with my candle out there, and the gas is like, and of course it took it away. And so
you didn't take it back.
Yes, I did. And that was the thing. And so I matched my environment and morphed to match the soulless abyss or cocoon of darkness.
The reason come out, the professor is here. She said what?
I matched the soulless abyss or cocoon that was my workplace. And one of the things that was big, that was missing, was that Northeastern, because of my role, they had 16,000 international students. The role that was important in Kennesaw was the part that was missing is that I did not have direct contact with students, and students were what was my why.
Yeah.
And so I was working in all these different areas that was not me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was not necessarily me being, I didn't have imposter syndrome. I was in the wrong place. It was like trying, if you've ever tried to wear jeans that don't fit, that's where you're jumping up and down, and then,
yes,
that's just me. Okay, good. Like you're kicking your leg like this in all these different ways, doing Purity's Michael Jackson moves to fit in. It was, I did not fit in.
Yes.
And because I didn't fit in, I should have left. And during that time, as I was working, that's the first thing that was falling apart. I was also falling apart mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
The more I worked, the more I stopped working. The more I worked this dream of the university, their dream, it wasn't mine. The more I worked, the more I stopped working on my joy, my family, my dreams, my core, and my very soul. So it was almost, if you hit something, the echo, because no one was home. And so the idea of...
Let me tell you what I want to do. Yes. I want everybody to type yes, who has been there. Because Catherine, I want you to know that you are not alone. Yes. Type yes if you've been there. Where you match your environment instead of bringing your light. And if you're doing it now, do double yes. Because Catherine needs to know that she was not in this alone. This is a yes, yes, yes. I have like 100 yeses that I can do in that. Because Catherine, this is brave. I want you to see the yeses. They are yeses and yeses and yeses and yeses. And they're coming. You are not alone in this.
And thank you.
Have done this.
And thank you for that. And as I was drowning, I didn't recognize I was drowning. I was just like, oh, this, what is this one? Purity, meet me in the golden tent. We are no longer doing blue tents.
Purity said that's what soulless abyss means. I love it. I just burst out laughing. I couldn't help myself there.
No, that's okay.
Go ahead.
And so at that time, and within that darkness, and this is where Jean, our mastermind, our OG, original gangsters, original designers, was it a Monday book club? Jean sent
Monday book club,
and it was this book.
Yes.
And I'd been listening to Jean.
This book. Look.
It was this book. Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
If you see it, yeah.
It's everywhere. I have these books.
Wow, you have 3. Okay.
I've written so much in mine.
Yes.
I have to keep getting a new book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so at that time, that's when, if you talk about whispers, that's where the whisper of I'm giving you a straw to hold on, get out. And so Jean started the book club. It started almost like a book club. Let's read this book. Let's get to talk. And we are joined. All my original folks know about this. So Catherine Odera, again, you'll see when I stop talking about myself in third person. The tea drinkers. So we started this Monday, and I joined because I was drowning and I needed something. I was not sure what.
Yes.
And I had never read the book, but I listened to the recording because I didn't make time to read the book. I was always listening in the train. Mm-hmm. My group know when I was running for the train, listening, and I was on the call. But I could have made time, but I didn't. I did, and my camera was always off. I was in the closet, or what I call CNN.
Let me explain, because I don't think people will understand. And this is because I'm a coach and have done this for a lot of classes. I now recognize people who are using excuses, like covering up.
Yep.
Catherine would come to class and she would say, because her children were around, what she would do is she would sit in the closet hiding from her kids. And everyone was understandable about that, because we know that children can come in the way of your learning.
Yeah.
What Catherine has shared with me now is that she was hiding so that she didn't have to show up.
Yes.
And I always joke, and I always say, I'm half joking when I say this, ladies, please stop pimping your kids. I usually say that, and I'm half joking, but I'm for real, because I know that moms are capable of so much, including organizing their lives so that they can come first.
Yes.
But Catherine said, and now describe it. Describe what CNN was.
CNN was the closet news network, meaning I was sitting with my lights off, surrounded by clothes of denim. I know that doesn't matter, I digress. But sitting quietly with my headphones on, as everybody else in the class was actually working. And I would type an answer. So just so that people knew I was there. I would type little things, and I did not, and this is where effort, and when we start designing our lives, effort and actually doing work matters. I did not make any effort. I was not making any effort. Jean always says, don't half-ass it. I was not assing it at all.
She didn't have an ass in it.
I had no ass. I was flat, finito. I turn, you don't see anything. Ego was my self-preservation.
Ego was her self-preservation. Did you hear that? There's your inner being and there's your ego. And she showed up with her ego. And who was the ego? What was the ego's name?
Catherine Odera doesn't fail.
Mm-hmm.
It was me in third person. Everybody who remembers those first few days, when you all, when I was going through the toxic environment and I was always blaming others. Oh, those people, they don't want me to succeed. They're finishing me. And the group started saying, it's okay, you can leave. And I'd say, no, Catherine Odera does not fail. Catherine Odera will never quit. Catherine Odera in third person. That is me talking. It's not anybody else talking. And later on, my original or OG mastermind group were the ones individually doing the work. I was riding on their coattails. They carried me. And the work was happening. There were those, like Joanne had said, okay, this round, I just want to sit in and listen. but she was working. She said, I don't have yet a project or something that I want to do, but I want to listen. And she was active. So her work was happening, but I was not happening. The closet was my crutch. My questions used to be, how will I feed my family if I quit? And this is one thing I've never forgotten.
I know.
Purity, and the ladies said, you will not starve. We will not let you starve. What I failed to acknowledge is that my ego and my definition of failure was causing me to starve my very own mind, body, and spirit, and hide within. So starving was not the actual act of eating. It was the thing that I was saying, I was not going to walk away from this because Catherine Odera does not need help. And so my ego was like, girl, we got to protect ourselves, girl, yeah, man. And I'm like, feeling it, and then but I was dying, I was drowning, but my ladies never gave up on me. Jean pulled me out. And then Tuesday, and the reason why I'm tying this, and I'm so sorry I'm taking long, but I'm tying it so that everybody can sort of see, and Jean can move me along.
Yes.
In the next Tuesday, remember that was Monday.
Monday class.
Three books were done. Think and Grow Rich, Outwitting the Devil, or The Devil Book.
By Rosemary.
Yes, by Rosemary. And U Squared. I did an eighth of the work of only Think and Grow Rich, and coasted and gave you all the excuses, and I stopped coming to class, if you remember. And so Jean put something about Tuesday, and she said, hey, I have a new class. And I said, Jean, I'm interested. I was always that person, hey, pick me. Jean Odera said, give me a call. And so before I got on the call, I was ready. I put on my lip balm. You can't talk to Jean when your lips are dry. This is what she told me. Tell me why I should let you into this class. What is different? What has shifted? And she said, are you coachable? What is different this time? Are you done dancing with average? And I was like, what happened was, and no, she said, are you done with dancing with average? And so the questions were more intense than the ones at the US Embassy, I said, in the 90s, because this was actually the first time that I sat down and had to fight for myself and let somebody else know that I was ready. And so and so Jean called me out on my BS. That was the first time, and you had 3 other opportunities to do that, but this was the time you're like, and that's what the value of a coach is. She knew me not only from those days we were children, but she saw me and she knew the big Catherine.
Yep.
And so she knew me, and then she's seeing this little shrunken Catherine that like those bladders we used to play with in Kenya. And she says, are you coachable? And so this was the first time she called me out on it, and the first time I was no longer going to be a passenger. And she let that be very clear. And she said, you have to choose yourself. We are going to be designing. You have to choose yourself. So I had to prove that I was ready to work. And my tipping point was when, Jean, you said this, and I think you shared it with one of your the people in the class. You said, if you're not prepared, and correct me, I may be misinterpreting it. If you're not prepared to become emotionally naked, you will end up becoming physically naked. Could you tell us what you meant by that?
Yeah. So here's the deal. I come from the position where I was bankrupt, but I didn't tell anyone for 5 years that I was bankrupt. And the reason why I filed bankruptcy is because I wanted to protect my home. If I had not done it, I would have been homeless. That is the truth. And I realized that for years and years, I had been sitting there pretending that everything was okay. And I was recognizing that because because I failed to be emotionally naked and to say, I need my spirit fueled, I need my mind fueled, I need my body fueled, and I need my family relationships fueled, I was about to be homeless.
Mhm.
The reason why I got to financial bankruptcy, because everything else was already bankrupt. And so I knew, and now I can see it in everybody, that if you do not become emotionally naked, where you say that this is who I really am, what's going to happen is you will fall and it'll show and everybody will see it. And I keep telling everybody, you are hiding your ass in a chiffon dress. You are hiding your ass in a chiffon dress. Everybody can see your ass. And if you have children in the room, I'm sorry. Everybody can see your ass.
Exactly.
And that's what she was doing. And I could see her ass.
And yeah, my ass was there, and I didn't have a nylon petticoat. And then so with the Tuesday group, we started becoming vulnerable. We started now creating, and you created a space, Jean, over your 3 times I've been in your class. You kept on tweaking and sort of making sure that how do I get the group of people in the class to start addressing those the sort of demons of fear. How do we? And so you started with later chapters.
Yes.
And you built up on it, and you created space.
Let me thank the people who stuck with me from the first classes, because the first classes I didn't know what the heck I was doing. And you know, I see them all here and they've forgiven me. I know they've forgiven me for that. I was just doing the best I could with what I knew how to do. Now I know when I start the class that we demystify fear. We start the class demystifying fear. Let's get fear out of the way so that we can get into the business of doing what we are doing. And I tell you, after the first chapter, they come to me crying, recognizing why their lives have been on pause because it is fear. Yes. You cannot think when you're afraid. Yeah. You cannot dream when you're afraid. You have no faith when you have fear, right? You cannot remind yourself to have faith when you're afraid. You certainly cannot see your skills when you're afraid. Forget imagination when you're afraid.
Yes.
And so I decided that's how we were going to teach this.
Yes.
And we drop fear, and then we move forward. And when we dropped fear, you found out that you are afraid of being poor. You're afraid of being criticized. You're afraid of old age. You're afraid of dying. You're afraid of losing love. There's so many reasons why people are afraid. And as soon as I demystify that, and I tell you where to get the answer, if you feel afraid, go here. If you feel afraid of poverty, go here. If you feel afraid of criticism, go here. Everybody knows what to do, and they get in the business of changing their lives.
Exactly.
That's what I know that is true now.
And that's what I really appreciated when you started us that way. And sorry, it was actually the Wednesday group. If you notice, I'm moving through the week. So I was this person who stuck with the class. And I'll tell you why I wanted to make sure I don't make it to the five days of the week. Otherwise, I'd be joining Diana in Thursday group. And so I had to graduate. So, but on the Wednesday group, my ladies who we call ourselves the Fab Wednesday because we always used to dress up with Jacinta and Lilo, everybody. It was a group of phenomenal women willing to display strength and vulnerability. You spent that time getting us to know each other, to get that space where we could talk to each other. And this was the first time, if you want to see the transition, and then I actually sat in my living room with my camera on.
Yes.
Those children, I got them to sleep early, made heavy dinner. By the time they were like, Mommy, I'm tired. I'm like, hey. Now, this was what I could have been doing before, but this was the first time I removed the crutch.
Mom, take charge of your children. They love a schedule so that you have to spend time for yourself. My sister told me when she was a new mom, it was the funniest thing I had ever heard. And she said, Lena is in bed by 8. And she was like, these people whose children are up till 10, don't they have shows to watch?
And you see, and that exactly is, and for me, I didn't have a schedule. It was, they would, but it was more of my crutch. It was my crutch. But this is the first time I was actually on camera. We were with Rose, everybody else, and so we started peeling the onion. I unlocked areas that I had safely tucked away. My 8-year-old self, if you notice, we are coming back to the 8-year-old self, my inner child, my unreconciled issues, responsibilities on my shoulders. And I remember telling a story, and I'll say, when I was 8-year-old, and Jean, what did you say? You were 8. And I said, yeah. And then you came back. You were 8. And the time you said it,
the story of what you were doing. She was telling a story about how she was responsible for the family, how she felt like she held the family together since she was 8 years old. And I'm listening to the story, and she's telling the story, and all I can see is an 8-year-old holding the family together. And I was like, how? And you kept going. I was 8. My dad told me, "Ayugi nyarkidi." I'm like, you're 8.
Exactly. And that's the first time I ever connected to see what those connections have been within my childhood that needed to be addressed. And I know Joanne has classes that focus on the inner child. And at that time, I had never had to think about it. And so that was the first thing, the onion, that I started on peeling and seeing what effect it had. There was a big dark family issue that happened a few years ago that broke everything I believed in my extended family, my home family, not my little family here, that broke everything I believed in justice and integrity and protection of children. And it contributed to the stigma and stagnancy where I could have gone back to the dark space. But at that time, I recognized that work needed to be done. And this was the first time I actually talked to the group about that dark secret. That
you could tell the group because you trusted them.
Yes, because I trusted them, and because I was finally working with a group, and my groups of women, my OGs, they were working, but I wasn't. And this time I was part of this work where why should I listen to other people being vulnerable in my closet and just sitting there and receiving their values and their lives, and I was not sharing myself. And so I recognized that work needed to be done. I remember the release I felt because the only stuff that I told my husband was the only one who knew what had happened at home in Kenya. But the ladies loved me. The ladies took care of me, and it was no longer. They called me out on my alibis. Mm-hmm. They made me, and you noticed I used to come in 30 minutes late because I was trying to get the kids, and then I started coming in closer and closer to the time. Yeah. And so I one of the things I recognized with this, and the reason why I'm focusing on this is because this was the springboard for what now I am doing. And throughout, your message and your coaching was very instrumental. And I'll say this: how could I design a project?
Yes.
In my definite main purpose when I had not designed and reconciled myself? So I began with my Tuesday group. Hey, Tuesday ladies. This was, if you notice, this is my third time. If you count the 3 books with OG, this is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, let's just not count any more fingers, but you get the point. And so with the Tuesday group, it was no longer working to provide alibis. And I needed to start designing my life. It was not, for me, it was not go and build things out there, because mine was broken and needed to be designed. Yeah, I needed to build a house, and in order, the house I'm talking about myself. Even when you're building a house, like Purity will tell you with Spanish trees, the foundation must be broken. You must break the foundation, set it so that the building has hope to actually survive. To get diamond in the rough, you actually have to mine and dig deep to find it and then polish it. To get exquisite metal art designs, as Esther and Mark can tell you, as a blacksmith, you put the metal into the fire, and you beat it into shape while it's still hot. Yeah. That is the work that I needed to do on myself. And I began to work, accountability, desire, faith, reading and speaking up in class. There's a time I was speaking, I'm like, who's that? And I realized it was actually me. And then after you've spoken, Jean makes you feel like you've said the most important thing. And she said, oh my God, did you all hear that? And I'm like, what did I say? What did I say? And then as she's hyping you up, you're like, So that was what was happening. I started speaking up. People started knowing who I was. I started knowing who everybody else was. And one thing that I hadn't noticed that was coming back, that was gone, my smile and my joy started coming back. And I started getting that belief that things could happen. And and switching to one comment for Wednesday, in the Wednesday class, Marcy and I learned that we needed to own our new lives and stop using the dishwasher to store plastic containers. And so those were the different things and the work that needed to be done. And I used the Design My Life to focus on myself. Yeah. I began designing parts of my life that needed renovation, a paint job, or total demolition. And recognizing that was very painful. But in order to get through and after a while, the tears stopped being painful tears. They actually were tears of joy, tears of cleansing. And one of the things that I wanted to say was that during that time, I separated from Northeastern University. If you think about, and I'm not even likening it to George Floyd, but I'm going to use the analogy of the knee on the neck. When you have something that's suffocating you, when you have, because the air is there for me, and this has nothing to do with the story about what I was talking about. Yeah, I just was holding my breath for so long that it had to breathe. And I was at that point where I needed, when I left the Northeastern, through help with therapy, through help with the mastermind, through loving support of the family, one of the things that had to go was me being in this rat race, literal rat race, waking up at 5 a.m. every single day, leaving by the 6 o'clock train, not getting to see my children, going to work until 11 p.m., coming back when the kids are asleep. You know, the only time I knew what my kids were wearing to school was the pictures that the little kindergarten used to send us. And I'd be like, oh, my husband. I put my family third or fourth or fifth. And Northeastern was everything to me. And so my priorities were wrong. And so by the time I left them, now I could start exhaling. And I did not think of the separation as rejection. It was actually redemption, preparing me for my new promotion into what I was designing my life to be.
And that is so amazing to me, because I think if anyone knows about me, I live from the inside out, and that spirit, mind, body first, and then family, work, and money. And for me, really in that order, and then it sorts itself out.
Yes, exactly.
And for you missed that lesson for 6 classes. And what I'm saying is this, but when you get it, you really get it. You really get it. That if you don't power up, and that's really what I call connecting to God, it's like having your computer. You're going on a 6-hour trip. When you have your phone at 100%, or you can have it at 6%. Which one do you want?
Exactly.
On a road trip, which one do you want?
Yeah.
On a road trip, I want to be fully charged, and I want to have my charger.
Yeah.
So I know God is always there. And if you're not doing that, I can guarantee that you're working on empty.
Yes.
And that is the design that I talk about. When I'm asking folks to design their lives, I'm not interested really in your work and your money. I know that's going to take its place. What I'm interested in is your spirit, mind, body, because at that point, you make good choices.
Yes.
And we've watched you make good choices.
Yes, and that was key. And the part that was on empty was my mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
And I started you see, when I talked about things falling apart in domino effect, when things start working and the design is happening, it's happening holistically. And so for the first time, I went back to my devotions and praying. I went back into, I'm still trying to, I found out that meditation, I didn't know how to do it. So I was actually finding ways like what Eva Boy had said, where you close your eyes and visualize. And so that started happening for me. I started being present for my children, putting down my phone, because my girl, who was 3, would push away my phone and put the arm around me and say, hug me, because my time was scarce with her. And I started visualizing and going back. Jean, you said this in one of your lives recently. I started seeing it with my childlike mind of that abandon and that free abandon of what possibilities are. So I started seeing that again. I started thinking about it, about my life, and mapping it out intentionally. When the chuckle, I wrote this down, when my chuckle and my laugh matched the twinkle of my eyes. When it did not hurt to breathe, because I had stopped holding my breath. And so I stopped seeing myself in spaces that I did not need to be in. I started being selective. I started being selective with my fluorescent lights. If somebody came to try and dim it, I had the choice to walk away with the light. Or I could be a saber, but I would walk away with it.
Or as Lisa Nichols says, tell them to get some shades.
Hey, because my future is too bright, girl, and my present. And so I started seeing also myself. And all this is working in congruence with the classes. And so I'm working on myself. I'm working with the other ladies. Lily became my accountability partner. Lily and I, we fear Facebook Live. So we were, but when it comes to accountability, we were actually accountability partners. And then I started visualizing the spaces that Catherine Odera, I had the right to be in. And I finally went and got my DEI certificate from Cornell, thanks to Angela Karanja. She took the leap and shared it and said, look what I did. And I said, okay, I've been thinking about this for a long time, but put work first. And I actually took the time to expand my mind, expand my soul. And so I chose myself. And so the reason why I'm calling out all the people is that they may not know, because I've never told them, how instrumental they were in helping, shining the light for me to get out of some of those darkness. And so, but still, I was falling into my old habits of talk, and no product. And Jean, there was a time I thought you would throw your laptop at me.
I might have.
Jean gave me a side eye like, because yes, I was growing, but I was falling into the old habits of not producing stuff. I was hiding behind, I would shrink and become small when I needed to, when I was afraid to produce things. And so I sent an email with the title to Jean, Struggling, but Fighting,
I wrote back, no.
You said no, because I asked for an appointment. Jean said no. Do not make an appointment until you get something concrete. And this is how your email sounded. So, girl, do not make an appointment until you have something concrete. And so I came in with a project, and the ladies in the group told me, okay, what is the deadline and when are you providing it? So you can't have an infinite time. You have to have direct time. When are you going to have it done? And I got it done. Jean didn't even want me to talk to her. She said, get it done. And I loved that tough love. Thank you. And what you did, set fire on my, now you notice I had no ass, right? But now I was fully assing it. So you set fire on my full ass. And you said, sorry, everybody. Get up and do something. Yeah. And so I got the work done. And what I kept telling Jean sort of is, what if I fail and fall? And she would say, with that old adage, but what if you fly?
What if you fly?
What if you fly? And so with the inside changing, I started now visualizing spaces, my interviews. But one of the things that this is one of my get-ups for my interviews. If you notice the brooch, when I show up into spaces like, yes, and I smile, I'm ready, and these are the shoes. So I'm dressed like I would. These are the shoes that I actually started visualizing, walking into spaces of jobs that I wanted. And so as I was working, I came up with looking at, I interviewed, and I've skipped because of time, but I interviewed with USAID.
Yes.
I could see myself walking into the building on 1300 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. And you know how I did that? I first Googled the place. I did Google Maps where you can, Google Photos where you can rotate it and see what else is. I looked at train stations nearby. And then I actually Googled to see the actual USAID space.
Yes.
I was walking in to those spaces before I even interviewed. And I showed up not only with a spirit of gratitude, but a spirit of belief, a spirit of the desire and connecting. And one of the things they wanted to know in my interviews is why. And what I've just taken you through, the why of growing up, the why of Luak Girls, and seeing that child, my student, married off, all these things and the development pieces, they could see that this meant something. And so I believed that I was worthy. I had God's amazing grace. And after the interviews, it was so rigorous. It was almost months and months of a sort of a government fellowship. I finally got the news that I matched, because they choose who they want. And I was their number one choice within the Gender Empowerment Hub. And they were my number one choice, but we hadn't told each other we were number one choices.
Yes. Catherine, hold on 1 second. I'm going to try and remove you and add you back. Just 1 second. Oh, well, it's okay. That's good.
Is it okay?
Losing you. We could hear your audio, but we were losing you. But still, we could hear your audio.
Oh, can you see me?
Yeah, we can still see you, kind of.
all of 5'2". Yeah. And so sorry about that.
Yeah, no big deal. We could hear you. We could hear you.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm. And so being in those space in knowing where I would not have been able to start having that faith and belief if I had not begun designing my life and being an architect of what that life needed to be. And so one of the things I got from when they told me I had the position and I announced it to the Tuesday group, just the joy that was shared. You could see that everybody was so excited. And Jean, as a coach, you have seen me at my worst. You've seen me at my lukewarmness. You've seen me at my, we have this analogy in Kenya where if you see the 3 stones of cooking, you know, if you come home and there's no fire on it, you know that nothing is going to be eaten. The cooking pot, and never gave up on me. And you are the coach that had the belief that I had the audacity to be Catherine Odera. That I was going to be able to, Jean, can you see me?
No, we can't see you. Just 1 second. 1 second. I have no clue what happened to Catherine.
Am I back? Can you?
No, we can see a black screen, but we can certainly hear you. Just 1 second. Let's see. Not sure what happened to Catherine Odera. Let's see. Okay, can you see her now?
Do you see my pearly whites?
I can see you.
Okay. So I'm winding down and
no. So here's what I did today. I was like, we're going a little long. And then I was like, why are you worried? I don't care. This story has to be told. I didn't care that you got long-winded. We did get long-winded. I don't care. This story has to be told because there's somebody who needs to hear you today, right? And I really didn't care. Now they can see you, but I want you to go back a little bit and talk about how the worthiness of walking into the spaces that you're in now.
Yes. I knew things that I needed to work on. And as I was working on myself, as I had shrunk, I had started questioning. It was those voices in my head. And I have this little thing that I always remember, if you just give me 2 seconds. And this was it. It said, in time, I realized I had no control over how I was treated at my place of work, but I did have control over how I resisted the voices in my head that kept telling me I was not enough. I chose to move forward, I chose to reframe, and I chose to thrive. And so a lot of that comes to it coming back to those spaces where, as I was working to define myself and reframe who I was, building upon those deep foundations, I started now seeing myself walking into spaces and seeing myself worthy of those spaces, and being selective over those. I was not going to take anything anymore just because I wanted to. I started seeing, I'm not sure if they had this part where I'd seen the USAID.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And so noticing.
You were the best.
Yes, I was. Girl, I'd forgotten. So it was and having I had a bookshelf behind me, and the books that I had were intentionally arranged. It was not books that I borrowed from the neighbor. It was actually books that showed what I was interested in. And in my interview, all but maybe one asked me about my bookshelf, because they knew what I had in my resume and everything, but they wanted to see, what are you reading? And so this was always there. So like, what are you reading, and the why? And one of the questions that the USAID, the job that I'm actually getting, that I got, asked me, who has been a deep influence to you and why? And so our stories matter.
Yes.
And people are interested in those stories. And for once, for 3 years at Northeastern, my story was not even part of the library, because I was just somebody who's coming in. Yes, it was a senior position, but I was not meant to be part of that story.
Right.
And because I was not meant to be part of that story, it broke, or I matched that vagueness and left myself at the door every single day, leaving at 5, coming at 11. And this is where I want to let you know where God's grace and where his reminders are. Yeah. When he said, the battle is not yours, Catherine. I will fight all your battles. You have to surrender. You have to let go. How many times did you tell me to surrender, Jean?
Oh my God, you carried me on my back. I can't remember.
Yes,
I was carrying you on my head, on my back.
I surrender.
I said surrender.
And I was like, never. But this is when I had it loud and clear during devotions. Let go. Remember when you told me, bless your enemies? I'm like, can I cast them first? You're like, no. Bless them. Pray for them. Felicia told us all this, and Karen as well. So it was more of, when I let go, everything else started falling into place. Yeah. And it was in a place of gratitude, a place of respect, and the grace that I had thought was not there. Now I could see it clearly. And I always say amazing grace. And I always say I once was lost, literally, but now I'm found. I was blind until I was blind, but now can see. And now I could not see until I actually saw. and I could not see until I actually paid attention. I couldn't hear until I listened. I couldn't hear until I was still. And so by the time I am getting to be in USAID, and I didn't build a project yet, but I had to find myself and design. And that's what I want to tell people. You don't have to have a business. You can have your definite main purpose. Once it aligns to who you are, that's what this class, I finally got it, Jean. I finally got it. I started saying my definite main purpose and including myself in it. And my new position will match me. It matches who I am. The mission is connected. The mission is connected to my soul and my heart. I actually am able to say that redemption is now a promotion, or a promotion is not my redemption. And I would encourage anybody who's thinking about it, who is in the classes right now. Yes, it took me 5 tries. 5, 6, 7, if you count running up to the train, that's effort. But until you choose yourself, and I think John says you are your own project, until you choose yourself, the designing and the breaking of that foundation will not make any sense. And when you have a tribe of women, when you have Jean will let you know you have reached that point. You have to choose yourself. And that has been one of the best things. And this is what my husband told me before I came here. He said, your dad is proud of you. That Father's Day is coming. Father's Days are usually tough for me because my dad is not physically here, but he still lives in here. But it was more of, your dad is proud of you because you have done what you said. You came back to who you are, and you have refined yourself into somebody you can look back to and say, I have met my purpose.
Yes. You are living in the energy of your soul.
Of my soul.
Now, here's one thing everyone wants to know. You visualized USAID, right? In addition to that, you are wearing the jacket and the brooch that you always wear at every interview.
Yes.
Your mom always told you that the brooch was important for a lady.
Yes.
And everyone wants to see the shoes that you would walk in with. She visualized herself walking into the building in those shoes. And guess what? She was walking into the building. And you said it was 1300 what?
1300 Pennsylvania Avenue. I Googled them. I walked into the spaces with Google photos and everything. And so this shoes will be walking into those paths, into it's the amazing, the power of visualization and belief and desire and just I would dress it up. The band on my watch used to be blue and then it broke. So everything was coordinated. So don't worry, like, what is that? But maybe this is just saying that, I'm versatile. And so I chose myself. I know my dad is proud, but mostly I'm also proud of myself. But I finally get it. I finally get it, Jean, and that everybody else needs to choose themselves as well. And I wanted to say, I took a leap of faith and grew wings on what I thought was my way down. Because if Jean hadn't literally thrown me out of the building, she knew I was going to fly, but I had to actually jump. And so with that leap of faith, we grew wings and we're flying. And the last piece is to know how God will still remind me of that rat race. Every week at about 5 a.m., I still wait. I'm not sure if it's a week bladder, but every time at 5 a.m., I still wake up. And when I wake up, I remember that rat race of me running, literally putting on my shoes as I'm running in the hallway to catch the train. But that reminder, I've made it into a sense of intentionality and gratitude. I stop at 5 a.m. when I'm awake, And I say, thank you for getting me out of that. And I will never, ever compromise who I am and what I am to fit into spaces I do not belong.
Congratulations, Dr. Odera.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've come a long way from playing Kati in a haram way.
Yeah, you are Haramu. Oh my goodness. But you see, I still loved you. Our path was supposed to be connected.
Yeah. One of okay, Purity needs you to read Grew Wings What? She said that. And I think you're going to have to type it in the chat after. But this is
okay.
One of the ladies who inspired you the most was this lady, Nancy Macharia.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Nancy. Let me tell you, with CNN Closet News Network, I was sitting in there, but I was following every lady's journey, and all the ladies were amazing. One day, Nancy calls. Did she call in from Asia?
Myanmar.
Yes.
She was working on her business, and she went to Asia by herself.
By herself. She demanded those spaces, and she was in meetings. And here I was hiding in the middle of clothes. She was getting work done. She got an influencer to model her clothes because she did not know limits.
Yeah.
And you think about Esther, you think about all these people, and you think
Esther
about
is Malkia E. And guess who's here next weekend?
Woo!
We have to talk to Esther. We're going to be talking to Esther next Saturday.
Yes.
And Esther will tell you her story of how she just dared to go out and do it. And then Nancy is next, but she doesn't know that. We haven't told Nancy yet, but she's next.
Now she knows. She'll be like, oh, why did I tell?
She knows, right?
But just living in the spaces that we're supposed to be, courageous, doing it afraid.
Yeah.
This Facebook Live, when you told me I was going to come up with an excuse, but yeah, I'm glad I did it afraid. I'm glad I did this, and the sky is it's not a limit. It's endless. So please pick yourself, choose yourself, join the classes. I'm glad it took me that. And yes, Think and Grow Rich. And now, Jean, you'll be proud. Look at my pages.
Look at my pages.
Look at ours. I know we're such nerds. We're like, look at mine. No, mine's better than yours. Mine is. Yeah, but just
the book. Yeah.
Yes, choose yourself.
I have a class coming up on July 15th, and that is my next class. In September, I actually get to double my prices in September. Yes. And the reason why I'm doubling my prices is because I am now growing into the class. The class has become the thing that is causing people to make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars more, because after they choose themselves, they're living these whole lives. And now I understand my value and the value of the service that I offer. And finally, the price is going to match the value of the class. Because remember, for the OGs, it was free. And then I moved it up. It became $199. Then it went up to $499. Then it went up to $999. And in the fall, in September 15th, it's going to be $1,999, because I know the impact that it's having. And I know the value of me, Jean Adero, who was asked by God to help African women and women of African descent, women and men of African descent, African professionals and leaders who are in the rat race, to release the cultural shackles, to stop dancing with average and begin to live the life of their dreams. I stand fully in my purpose, and I'm honored to see you standing in yours because you dared to come to the class.
I appreciate it. And if I can finish with my Fresh Prince thing again.
Go ahead and do your thing, girl.
Okay. Now it's a bookend. And I started with this, and I'm going to finish it with this.
Yes, please.
Now, this is the story all about how my life got twisted, turned upside down. I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there, and tell you how I am now an architect of my own life. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you
Catherine,
for the tribe as well.
I love you. I love you. I love you. And I wanted you to tell this story because people think that this is a class for entrepreneurs. This is a class for African women and men.
Yes.
People of African descent. I'm saying if you're African American, this story is for you. If you're from the Caribbean, this story is from you. If you're Aborigine, this story is for you. If you're human, this story is for you. Part of the reason I focus on African people is because the cultural shackles that we experience are unique.
Yes.
And I know them and I can teach them.
Yes.
That's why I do that. It is not that I don't like European people. I love them. But I just know that my expertise is for us. And I'm grateful and I am glad that you eventually chose yourself. Now, guys,
yes.
For those of you who have been in one class, I hope Catherine encourages you to take 6, if that's what it is.
Yes.
You can find yourself, right? And I just want you to know that you have helped people see themselves through your story.
Thank you.
And guess what? We get to hang up and then I get to talk to you.
Okay, so I stay?
Yeah, stay on. Everybody else gets to go and do whatever it is that they do on Saturday mornings that we help them.
Yes.
My friend Mandeep said, if you don't have a voice, this story is for you.
Oh, thank you.
I just met Mandeep. I just met Mandeep recently, and she's my bestie. And guess what else?
What?
We're going to India together.
What? Where's my passport?
I'm going to end the broadcast and then you and I can continue talking before you have to go and attend to your family.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.